It's about prayer and it's about like dancing for minobumatsu and like living your life in a good way. So to start off, I want to show you guys like the basic powwow dance step. You do not need to be indigenous to like dance at our powwows. We welcome everyone and we want everyone to come to our powwows. But the basic step, you'll hear at a powwow, you'll hear like the MC say like, oh, this is intertribal, and that's when you can go up. And the basic step is a 1-2-1-2 step. So it's 1-2-1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. And this step seems, in theory, sounds really easy, but to program it into your body, you just gotta like repetition, because a lot of people just want to do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So they'll be like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But that will get harder to travel. You'll be able to move around better if you're doing 1, 2, 1, 2. And to make it harder, you add a hop. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2. Kind of like skipping or hopscotch. And I get a lot of students, I've done this work for a long time. I'm almost 40 years old. And people are always like, people are gonna watch me and they're gonna look at me and judge me. And I would always tell people, just don't even give a crap what people think when they watch you, and to dance with a purpose. So like when you're dancing, like I would when I would dance to like thinking about all those hard things I lived through, you could like hold thoughts in your heart and dance for something. Dance for a family member that can't dance for healing, dance for grief. Whatever's close to you, like when you're dancing, hold those thoughts. So I'm gonna put on a straight song or an intertribal. One that's not too fast and not too long. Here, this one might be good. This is by Cree Confederation. This one. Every time you hear a drum beat, a good beat, but long. It's a good warm up. Okay. Hi, Michaela. Hi, Genesis. Hi, Kathy. Whew. Okay, so now that we moved our bodies a little bit, let's get a little stretch. I like to always stretch my hip adductors, abductors, one of those in here. So I dance fancy, shawl, and jingle. I mostly dance fancy. When I dance fancy, I'm on one foot a lot. So I get injuries in here. Stretch your calf muscle. So keep your legs parallel, take a step forward, keep your heel on the ground and lean forward until you feel a stretch in the back of your calf. I feel it in my hip. I have tight hips, or I have weak hips from sitting too much because of COVID. Just sitting at home all day. Other leg. Get something to hold on to. Grab one ankle, stretch your quadricep. Try to keep your legs parallel to each other. Avoid this. If you need a deeper stretch, you can use two arms. Other leg. Okay. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but when we were doing our warm-up song, I was doing like different steps. And I want to show you how to make up some of your own steps. So I learned how to do my own choreography when I was living in Winnipeg when I was 17. So this is like 20 years ago. And I went to a powwow dance class at the Thunderbird House in the North End. And there was a woman there, I think her name was Bonnie, but it was so long ago, I forget. But she showed me this really amazing tool to come up with footwork. She said to paint an imaginary box around your feet. And she said to tap the different corners. And she's like, this is how you can come up with your own footwork. And she said you can even label them. So like 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then you can just like practice tapping the different corners. So let's try tapping the front. And then to make it like a powwow step, you add a hop. So you're hopping on one foot, tapping each corner. Now we're going to switch to the other side. We can try the back. Other side. And since it's been 20 years I've been using that, but I also like use the X, so it's like an X across. So it's like if I'm a plus sign, if I'm standing in the middle, I can touch the front, the side, front, side, front, side, front, side, front, side. So this is like hop, 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 hop. So like every drum beat, my feet would touch the ground. And we'll go over a sequence that I always teach in my classes. It's gonna be crisscross twice, side tap twice on each side, and then small kicks 4 times. And just watch it first, and then if you can, join in on the second time. So crisscross, out, front, out, front, out, front, out, front, side, tap, other side, tap, small, kick, criss, cross, side, tap, other side, tap, small, kick, criss, cross, side, tap, other side, tap, small, kick. Whew. Okay, so I'm gonna put on a song and let's try to do that sequence to the music. Then when I get tired, I will just say freestyle and then just work on your 1, 2, 1, 2. Side step. Let's see. So I'm gonna tell a story now so I can catch my breath and let my feet rest. I always like to share this story when I'm doing classes with two people. I always like to share the story about the big drum, because the big drum is like what brought us here together today. It's the music that connects us. And when I was, I've always loved powwow since I was that little girl, like 30 or so years ago. And I grew up in Thunder Bay, Ontario, and it wasn't always a safe place for Indigenous kids. I faced a lot of racism in school. I faced racism in stores, and I faced racism like walking down the streets. So people would, yeah, it was just not a good experience. And when I went to college, I focused all of my work on like studying the history of powwow dance. And growing up, I always heard the same story about the drum. Sometimes it would be a little different, sometimes the nations would change, but it always came back to the same story. And being in college, the schools don't recognize oral tradition as a viable source in most cases. So I had to find a source that was recognized. So I found a book written by, actually I didn't find the book then. I think back then, I didn't find the book till recently, like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but it was written by a non-Indigenous person and it's a recognized source. But the book is pretty good. It's called the Ojibwe Drum, and the guy did do good research. And the story that I got from that book was that the big drum came to the Lakota people in the late 1700s. And it was at a time when what is now known as the US government, they were clearing the lands. They were going to each community, kicking the Indigenous people, or going to war with the Indigenous people and forcing them onto reservations. And when they got to this Lakota community, a woman named Tail Feather Woman sent 4 of her adult sons to go to war with the US cavalry. And unfortunately, all 4 of her sons were killed in battle. And when that US cavalry came to her community, she knew she had to run away. So she ran away. And those US cavalry men, they chased her. And she found a place to hide. It was a pond. And she hid under the water, under lily pads. And she used a long hollow reed to breathe underwater. And when she was under there, it is said that Gitche Manadu, the great mystery, came down to visit her. And it took Gitche Manadu 4 days to give her special instructions on how to make this big drum and what songs to sing on it, how to care for it. And at noon on the 4th day, she got out of the lily pads and she went to where her people were hiding. And she said, "We got to make this big drum." So the women, they made this big drum, and the women, they gifted it to the men. They said, "This is going to give you purpose during this time of change." And they took that big drum to where the war was happening and the killing. And they sang one of those songs that she taught the men, the songs that she was instructed. And those men sang that song. And then right away, when those soldiers heard the song, they put down their weapons and they're like, "Oh, wow, what is that?" And they always say like it brought peace to the war, but it didn't bring peace. It stopped the killing. It didn't bring peace because the Lakota people were then forced out to the reserve and they weren't allowed to leave, and then they were almost starved to death because like they killed all of the buffalo. And yeah, it was just like but that's my 2 cents on that story. But yeah, that big drum was like it came through struggle, and it came to bring us, and it still brings us together to this day. And then I was always like, well, why don't women sit at the big drum? And then I was always being like, well, the women gifted the drum to the men to give them purpose. And I always say sometimes the spirit of that big drum calls to women too, and that is okay. And I remember being like a teenage girl and watching an all-woman drum group come to my community, and it was so nice to see. It's not as common, and sometimes those women will face struggles by doing something that isn't deemed like not our place. So I always stand with women when they challenge those gender roles and sing, and I support those women. So yeah, I just wanted to share that story. So now that I had a little break, we can keep dancing. I have a lot of stories, so you guys get to choose the stories you want to hear. So I have stories about like grand entry, the men's and women's traditional dance, stories of jingle dress and grass dance, and stories of men's fancy and woman's fancy. So if anyone wants to unmute yourself or drop it in the chat box if you have requests. Any curiosities about powwow dance culture? This is like a safe space to ask those questions. Tell us your favorite story about one of the dances. So I am a fancy shawl dancer. I've danced fancy since I was like 15. And fancy shawl is like, I wear a shawl on my arms when I dance. And the fancy shawl dance it's actually the evolution of powwow dance. Powwow dance was not like this, the way it is today, like when we were living in our communities off of the land. It's more so evolved as colonization evolved. It's been our sacred way to come together during colonization. We can still travel and be with our communities and sing our songs and do our culture together. But grand entry, that's an interest. I always start there because it's just interesting. So in the early 1900s, there was this traveling theater company called the Wild West Show. And the Wild West Show went all over the whole world, telling stories of the Wild West, where the US cavalry were the saviors and the indigenous people were the wagon burners. And then at the beginning of every one of these shows, they would have a grand entry, and they would bring in the flags, followed by the veteran actors, followed by the Indian actors, and they would come in and do a circle. And in this Wild West show, the indigenous people were always the villains. And like in the early 1900s, the Indian Act was already in place in what is now Canada. And if you were caught practicing your culture, or if you were a handsome Indian and you went to jail for practicing your culture, by then our culture was against the law, they would send you to do your jail time on this Wild West show. So if you want to read into it, there's this really good book called The Imaginary Indian, and it talks a lot about the Wild West show. And the Wild West show, a lot of our dances evolved in the show. It was very popular. Sometimes people wanted to go be on the show because they could go and travel. And at that point, our only dance, like the women would mostly, like not the Anishinaabe women, but like the women of the plains, they would dance on the outside only. And their dance was very gentle. And the men, they would do their grass dance or men's traditional dance. And it's the same step I showed you, the 1-2-1-2, but they would be like, sometimes they would have little bustles. And it was through this Wild West show where the men's traditional dance evolved into the men's fancy dance. Because there was a man who really wanted to be on the show. So he put on a second eagle bustle up here on his upper back, and he told the drum to sing a really fast song. And at that point in time, the only step that the men's traditional dance did was 1 2 1 2, and they just kind of like zigzagged around. They didn't go backwards. They didn't do any kicks or spins or anything like that. But that one man who wanted to stand out, he put a second eagle bustle on, told him to sing a fast song, and then he spun around and he kicked his legs and he danced backwards, and the dance evolved. So that men's traditional evolved into men's fancy. And then during World War II, Indigenous men were one of the most men to enroll in the war. All of my grandparents went to war. All of my extended family, they all went to World War II. So there were many women who were taking on men's roles in our communities. And there were still powwows happening at this time. And it was women challenging the way that we were not allowed to dance in the middle. And the only dances we had were on the outside, or dancing jingle and ceremony. But the men's fancy dances, they had this beautiful dance. So women started to, the story was shared with me from Melvin John from Kihiwan, Alberta. He told me a story about a woman who disguised herself as a man and went and danced with these men, and she did amazing. And they were like, oh, who's this amazing dancer? And then they found out that it was a woman. So at first she got in trouble. She was scolded, she was pushed out, and then they were like, well, this woman wants to dance fancy, like let's give her a dance. And they took a shawl and they put it on her back, and then said, there, you can be woman's fancy shawl. And this, in the beginning, woman's fancy shawl was not accepted by the community. People would throw rocks at them. They would tell these women, like, it's not your place, that's the men's place to dance in the middle. But the women ignored them, and they just kept doing it and pushing those boundaries. And then eventually people just accepted the shawl dancers. So a fancy shawl, it's a warrior dance. It's the evolution of the warrior dance. And I love sharing this story because so many times in our communities, especially like northern, like in Thunder Bay, it was really like homophobic, and it wasn't safe for Two-Spirit people or trans Indigenous people to dance their chosen dance. So like right now, the trans LGBTQ community faces a lot of discrimination, and I share this story because like we weren't accepted in the middle. Like we just need to stand with our community members who are being challenged and support them, and ask like, how can we support you? How can we stand with you? And like make sure that they don't get beat up, or just giving them our support, right? The traditional outfit. So there's many different regalias, and every regalia is different based on the nation. And across Turtle Island, there's like so many different nations. And I can speak for myself as an Ojibwe woman. My regalia, I don't have it here with me, but I have like beaded, it represents my nationhood. So by looking at someone, you can tell a little bit about their story. And sometimes you can't, like sometimes it's every regalia is different, right? So, here, some of my beadwork. My Ojibwe florals. So this is like flowers. This is like my nation's way. And then on the back of my yoke, my beaded yoke, there is my Anishinaabe name. So in the Ojibwe, like we get one of our rites of passage as in our culture, we get like Indigenous names. So like I got my Indigenous name when I was like 23, and it's Nanukase. It means hummingbird. So I have a hummingbird on my regalia, and it just depends. Yeah, it's just like, and then you also get colors that are special to you, that are unique to you, that you would put on your ribbon skirt or your regalia. Yeah, but then like I'm Ojibwe, if my Haudenosaunee best friend, like her regalia is totally different. Like she's Mohawk from Six Nations. Her outfit is totally different and it has different stories and different history. So it just depends what land you're on and whose territory you're in about their outfits. So like the Cree, they have different outfits. I was just in like Swampy Cree territory on the weekend. I was in northern Quebec, where all of the community only speaks French. They speak French, Cree, and then some kids will speak English, but they're different. Their designs are different. And it's always based on their language and their nationhood. And like our powwows are for everyone, but making regalia is based on your nationhood. So if you're gonna make a regalia, it should be based on what Indigenous nations you come from. So if you're not Indigenous, it isn't appropriate to make a fancy shawl and then I even see fights on Facebook about like non-Indigenous women making ribbon skirts because those have grown to be really sacred to Indigenous people nowadays. So like the skirts, people don't, but I fight back against that. I'm like, well, if I see like this really awesome ally who's like supporting our community and just like being a super amazing advocate for us, like I'm gonna gift them with a ribbon skirt. And I'll support them to wear it. Yeah. Oh yeah, and then you have to be gifted with your ribbon skirt. Interesting. Cook, where are you from? You're from Northern Ontario.
I'm from Akwesasne. It's a part of the Mohawk Nation.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I missed that powwow. For like I don't identify as two-spirit. So I was always taught like two-spirit people were sacred in my community, and it's documented in books in like old racist journals from like priests and missionaries who came to our territories, because you can find all of like the old books from them. But since in community, since I was little, like they are sacred people, but they also, yeah, like I said earlier, they face a lot of discrimination. And any people that are two-spirit, they can choose to dance the dance that they want to dance, and they should be supported. So like if a young boy who wants to dance jingle dress, like he should be supported. But sometimes that doesn't always happen because of misogyny and people pushing their gender norms on kids. I know that there's a two-spirit powwow that happens. I can't remember. It's not in Toronto, but yeah, it would probably be good to like look into the two-spirit powwow and then like connect with people who identify as two-spirit. Genesis. Okay, we should probably dance more. Let's get more sweaty. I'm already tired. Want to shake? I want power shake. Here, I'll put on some Southern song. So we were listening to like Northern singers. Northern singers sing very high pitched, and the Southern singers, they sing very low. They sing from their tummies, and it's like their songs are so beautiful. And their honor beats are different. They're kind of just like, duk, duk, duk. And then, yeah, you'll hear it.
Hey!
a different song. I'm going to put on a sidestep. So sidestep is a jingle dress song, and the jingle dress is a healing dance. It comes from the Anishinaabe, but the Anishinaabe, they shared it with all nations across North America. So if you go to Florida, California, Alaska, like the jingle dress will be in all those places. The dance step for side step, it's pretty easy. You just step to the side, and we would be traveling in a clockwise position. Side, step, side, step, side, step, side, step. To make it a little harder, you can add a little, so it's like down, up, down, up, down, up. It's really fast. The side step is really fast. To make it harder than that, you could do it on your tippy toes, and you go up, together, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. This one is a right calf burner. And like when I train for a jingle for side step, I'll do till it burns this way, and then I'll do it till it burns the other way, just to have some muscle balance. But for the proper way to dance it, it's side, step, side, step. If it gets hard, you can also just go flat foot and just like, that's the easiest. I'm gonna try going my tippy toes as long as I can. Challenge myself. And you guys can too. By Big River Creek on Spotify. Burning. Okay, so we have about 6 minutes left. anyone has any other questions, maybe we can do a little stretch actually. Stretch my right foot. The side step. Yeah, and if anyone else is like wanting to learn more or learn more footwork, I do have a YouTube channel, and I have like jingle dress and fancy shawl tutorials for footwork, and it's just called How to Power Dance on YouTube. I posted like 9 tutorials last year, and now that my kids are finally in school, I hope to post some more. I have 5 kids, so the pandemic really kicked my butt. Okay, so if there are no other questions, miigwech everyone for coming.
Shimmy, Gwitch, Deanne, that was great. Is anyone else sweaty? Who's sweaty?
I'm sorry.
So, Chimigwech for all the participants who came out this morning. Good afternoon in 5 minutes. So this week, we also have the rest of our education week today, virtual education week, as well leading up to our virtual powwow on Friday, and we have an in-person event this Saturday at the X-University campus, formerly known as Ryerson University, which we will have a vendor market, and it is a family gathering with a bunch of activities that we have planned that are, we have an Indigenous artist that will be doing a community mural with everyone. So if you want to come out to that, as we do it this Saturday. And Chimigwech.
Okay, Bamaki everyone.
Bama. Thank you.